I read the story was two couples, both had kids, moved to Brixton, bonded over beer. Talk to me about the genesis of that.
So that is the story, and it's all 100% true. None of it is made up, because I've been on a few brewery tours and I've heard the founding story. I'm like, that's not actually quite how I remember it, because obviously I follow the industry and that kind of thing. But anyway, so my wife and I bought a flat in Brixton in 2006, and Mike and Social bought a flat at exactly the same time across the road in 2006, but we didn't meet until 2010 when we both had our first kids. So there's like a month age difference between my son Joseph and their daughter Saskia, and we were in a bar in Brixton called Hive Bar. It's on the corner of Beehive Place, and back then in Brixton it was pretty much the only place you could get a gourmet hamburger. Now you can't move for gourmet hamburgers. We were in there on a Sunday with our baby Joseph in a pram, and Mike and Sochel were in there at the same time with Saskia in a pram, and Sochel, Mike's wife, came over and sort of looked into our pram, and we started talking, and we were pretty much the only people in the bar at the time. And Mike and Sochel are Canadian, my wife's British, but grew up in Canada. So we had that connection, and we were like, hey, where do you live? And they're like, yeah, we're on Saltine Road. And we were like, hang on a minute, we're on Saltine Road as well. And, then you sort of start talking like, what number are you at? And they were basically diagonally opposite to each other. And so we'd been living basically really close to each other without our paths ever crossing until that Sunday lunch for 5 years. And then when I found out where they lived, I'm like, Mike, I've been in your bedroom. Because I'd viewed the same flat. When I was buying the flat I bought, I'd viewed the one that he bought. So that freaked him out a little bit. We started hanging out. Then I was having a beer with Mike, and I sort of just made a flippant remark. I'm like, we should open a brewery in Brixton. I could see what was happening in Bermondsey, Hackney, places like that. And he was like, well, you know what? I actually wanted to open a brew pub back in Canada, but my dad would never let me. So we kind of joked about it. But that was kind of like a bit of a light bulb moment. He sent me an email, I think, on the Monday and said, if we're going to open a brewery, we better learn how to make beer. And he bought this beer kit on Amazon, a Mr. Beer kit. I didn't want to be outdone, so I'm like, okay, I better do something. So I registered brixtonbrewery.com. And that was kind of the first step. That was like the stake in the ground. We had none of the skills, none of the experience, none of the knowledge we needed to open a brewery. But from that point, we just sort of started method acting and taking baby steps. So we made the Mr. Beer kit. We kind of boiled it up on his hob in his flat, fermented it in his airing cupboard. And I remember Libby and Sochel had T-shirts made for us, like fictional T-shirts. And they said Brixton Brewers, quality beers at the end of the Victoria line. I still actually have the T-shirt. I tried to wear it for our 10th birthday party, but it doesn't fit quite as well as it did then. So I didn't wear it. But we were like, maybe we're the people that could do this in Brixton. But what really motivated us and drove us was I didn't want to be the person that had the idea and talked about it and didn't do anything about it. I wanted it to be us. I didn't want it to be anyone else. And I was actually really amazed that Brixton didn't yet have a commercial brewery, because there were breweries in all other parts of London. But I guess it was, Brixton was not as gentrified, or whatever reason. It was held back for some reason. So we made it our mission to be the people that opened the brewery. And we've had quite a few people over the years who've come to us and said, yeah, I thought about doing that. I'm like, but you didn't. We were the people that did it. And, that really drove me forward is, if you see an opportunity and it's all about timing, embrace it. So it was like that in 2013 when we opened the brewery. It was like that again when Heineken came and we did the deal with them in 2017. I feel like there's windows of opportunity to do these things. And we've been fortunate to have had two, basically. One starting the brewery, and then the other was when big brewers were looking to partner and acquire craft brands. We were both in the right place at the right time for both of those opportunities. And, I feel like maybe the time has passed for both of those things now.
what I love there, two things you said is we were method acting, and we were, and I think, I don't know, you said your wife made those T-shirts which said...
Yeah, Libby and Social both had them printed.
Yeah, printed
together.
say Brixton Brewery, just down...
quality beers down the Victoria line.
Quality, that is writing the story. You know how we said a business is a fiction?
Yeah.
That is, as much as it is you writing down the story and the values and doing the boring but important stuff to get the team galvanized, you have actually believed the story yourself by putting a T-shirt on, method acting.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot in that for people listening to this. Is if you can get granular and glacial clarity on your story, even if you have to fake it. I mean, kind of with this podcast, I had no idea what I was doing. I just said, right, I'll be okay at podcasting.
Yeah.
And it seems
and
to
you are.
be working out on about that first 2-3 first 20 were awful. The one before I did Charlie Bigham, and I was pacing up and down my flat thinking, this is hideously scary. I've got no idea. I'm so out of my depth, but I believe the story, and I think there's something real value in that.
And then you can manifest it, basically.
Yeah, but you've got to believe the story. And I think in terms of like how... Because I think one of the common themes is it seems too good to be true, right? And you said there's these two opportunities that have come around. There's opportunities for a lot of other breweries at the breweries at the time. You seem to have a superpower to spot the opportunity or lean into the opportunity. Could you speak to that? How do you do that?
I think it's leaning into it. I mean, you have got to spot it, but other people spotted it way before we did, but in other areas, basically.
What do you mean by that?
Like the Colonels spotted it a lot before we did. Brewdogs.
Colonel, I've never even heard of them. Mine.
They're one of the pioneers of London brewing. And a lot of London brewers will, say that that's what inspired them to get going. I think Ian from Brick Brewery in Peckham basically was inspired by them. Lots were Brew by Numbers, who I mentioned earlier. Like a version of the Colonel. Red Church, who were one of the early London brewers, were basically an imitation of the Colonel and that kind of thing. I think spotting the opportunity, I think we were also inspired by a success story from across the pond. So Brooklyn Brewery, which started in the 80s.